Hey, you!
What's that? Whoa!
It's a moment that feels silly and magical, but it taps into something deep. Santa Claus is such a powerful figure in our culture today that even becoming him is instantly recognizable. The beard, the belly, the suit, we all know the look. Santa didn't always look like this though. In fact, the Santa we know today, the jolly red-suited guy from the movies like the Santa Claus, only came together after centuries of changes across dozens of countries. The story of Santa starts far from the North Pole, in the ancient world, with a real man whose generosity sparked a legend that spread around the world. Today, we're going to unpack exactly how that happened. Our journey actually starts in the year 270 AD, in the warm coastal region of what is now Turkey. This is where a boy named Nicholas grew up in a wealthy Christian family. Sadly, his parents died when he was young, leaving him a large inheritance. But instead of keeping the money, Nicholas decided to use it to help people who were struggling. As he grew older, Nicholas became a bishop, which, at the time, meant he was sort of the community guardian and spiritual leader. And he quickly became famous for one particular trait. He gave gifts anonymously. He didn't want praise, he didn't want attention, he just wanted to help. The most famous story about him involves a poor man with 3 daughters. The man was so poor he couldn't afford their dowries, meaning the girls wouldn't be able to marry or have stable futures. Nicholas heard about this and decided to secretly help. So, one night, he walked to their home, tossed a bag of gold through the window, and disappeared into the dark. The next night, he did it again, and on the third night, the father waited at the window and caught Nicholas in the act. But Nicholas begged him not to tell anyone. This story spread through villages and cities, and people began to see Nicholas as a kind of hero. After he died in 343 AD, he became known as Saint Nicholas, the patron saint of children, sailors, and the poor. By the Middle Ages, people celebrated him every year on December 6th, leaving gifts for children just like he once did. Already, the core Santa Claus traits were in place. A man who delivers gifts at night, who cares for children, and performs secret acts of generosity. In the Netherlands, he became Santa Claus, a tall bishop dressed in red robes who rode a white horse across rooftops. Children left out shoes instead of stockings, and the Santa Claus filled them with treats on the evening of December 5th. He even had a big book listing the behavior of every child, the early version of the naughty and nice list. In England, children knew Father Christmas, a tall, cheerful figure who represented joy, feasting, and celebration. He wasn't originally a gift bringer, but when his character eventually blended with St. Nicholas, he became one. And in the snowy world of Scandinavia, people told stories about the niece, or taunt, small bearded household guardians who wore pointy hats and sometimes delivered gifts at Christmas. If these sound familiar, it's because they're basically the ancestors of Santa's elves. At this point, we have a swirling mixture of characters: St. Nicholas the saint, Santa Claus the bishop, Father Christmas the party guy, and the Scandinavian elves. Each culture added a new piece of the puzzle, setting the stage for the full transformation that would happen next. In America. In the 1600s, Dutch settlers sailed across the Atlantic and built a colony called New Amsterdam, which later became New York City. And with them, they brought their beloved Santa Claus traditions. Local English speakers heard the name, but stumbled over the pronunciation, and simplified it into something new: Santa Claus. But Santa Claus still looked and acted like Sinterklaas at this point, a tall, serious bishop in religious robes. That would soon change thanks to a few imaginative American writers. One of the earliest to reshape Santa was Washington Irving. In 1809, he wrote stories describing Santa flying across houses in a wagon, dropping presents down the chimneys. It wasn't exactly the Santa sleigh we know, but it introduced the idea of Santa traveling magically above the rooftops. Then, in 1823, everything changed with one of the most important poems ever written, A Visit from St. Nicholas. though we know it as "'Twas the Night Before Christmas."
It's hard to explain.
It's the ladder.
Where the hell did this come from?
Look here, Dad. The Rose Such a Ladder Company.
Huh?
Out by the roof, there's a Rose Such a Ladder. Just like the poem.
It's like the poem.
This poem completely reinvented Santa Claus. It turned him from a bishop into a jolly, round-bellied man wearing fur clothing. It introduced the 8 reindeer, gave them their names, and established that Santa came on Christmas Eve. It even explained how he got into homes, through the chimney. Before that poem, none of these things were universal. After that poem, they became the standard. It was this moment and this poem that turned Santa into a magical, joyful character instead of a religious figure. And America absolutely ran with it. Now that the story of Santa was set, artists needed to give him a face, and that job landed on a political cartoonist named Thomas Nast in the 1860s. Working for Harper's Weekly, he created dozens of Santa illustrations that shaped everything we associate with him today. Nast was the one who placed Santa at the North Pole, far from any one country, so he belonged to the whole world. He came up with the idea of Santa having a little team of elves, a detailed naughty and nice list, and a massive, bustling toy workshop. In his drawings, Santa became shorter, rounder, fluffier, and more magical. But Santa didn't fully stabilize into this modern look until the 20th century. Enter Coca-Cola. Starting in 1931, Coca-Cola hired artist Haddon Sundblom to create a warm, friendly Santa for their holiday ads. Sundblom painted Santa as a big, jolly, grandfatherly figure with a bright red suit, white fur trim, shiny boots, and rosy cheeks. His Santa was so charming and so human that people around the world instantly connected to him. These ads ran for decades, and because Coca-Cola was such a huge global brand, this version of Santa became the international standard. So, while Coca-Cola didn't invent the red suit, it definitely spread it everywhere. By the mid-1900s, Santa became a superstar. Radio shows, department stores, holiday postcards, and children's books explained his mythology further. Then came Rudolph. In 1939, a department store writer created the story of Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer as a promotional booklet. A decade later, the song became a global hit, and Rudolph joined Santa's team for good. Movies in the 20th century, from Miracle on the 34th Street to the classic stop-motion specials like Rudolph and Santa Claus is Coming to Town, continued adding depth to the character. Modern films like Elf and The Santa Claus brought humor and fantasy into his legend, making him feel both magical and familiar. And that brings us to today's Santa Claus, a blend of a 4th century bishop, Dutch folklore, English tradition, Scandinavian elves, a legendary poem, 19th century cartoonist, and 20th century advertising campaign. Not bad for someone who originally just threw bags of gold through windows. If you enjoyed this deep dive and want more long-form videos just like it, make sure to like, subscribe, and comment what topic you want me to cover next.